Hello, welcome to Escaping the Echo Chamber. Today I want to talk about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. First of all, those of you that aren't familiar, she recently won her primary. She's a newcomer to politics. She won her primary against Joe Crowley, the incumbent corporate Democrat, connected, seemingly very close in line to be the next Speaker of the House. But she went up against him. She out hustled him, and like hustle, she worked. She was out there knocking on doors. She ran a hell of a campaign to make sure that people knew who she was, and she was able to speak to concerns of people, and she won. And because she won, she was, despite being outspent, outraised financially. There's a very large amount of attention on her, and they're calling her the rising star. She's clearly a rising star of the Democratic Party. She's clearly a rising star of politics. But they're saying that this is the future of the party, of the Democratic Party, because she veers very far to the left. She calls herself a democratic socialist, and from my perspective, she's socialist. Because there are those that will make the distinction between socialism and democratic socialism, then others that will make the distinction between socialists or democratic socialists and social democrats. But she's not social democrat, more democratic socialist, and I think beyond democratic socialist, she's socialist. That's from the things I'm hearing her say. That's what it seems to be. And the first question people may ask was, what's your problem with socialism? And the interesting thing is, there's a lot of people who may not be as familiar with history that ask these questions. And I think it's I still do think it's a fair question, because especially when you consider the aims of what she's talking about. So she's talking about making sure that people are able to afford health care, making sure people are able to afford housing, making sure people are able to afford education, get jobs, be seen. There's a lot of people out here suffering. And yeah, definitely, we need to, if you're running for any type of office, and you're just like, screw the little guy, that sucks. That's question is, what does anybody, why would anybody vote for you? But her platform, her message speaks to a lot of people who are out here struggling, trying to make ends meet. There's a lot of people who are just, don't make a lot of money, and are feeling that despite these proclamations of how well the economy is doing, their lives don't look markedly different. So the problem with socialism. Okay, so yeah, there's a lot of problems with socialism, but let me stick to Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. It's interesting that she talks about addressing, health care, wages, getting jobs, these issues that I think are all symptoms of a problem, instead of the root cause of those symptoms. And just from a strategic standpoint, I think it's always a mistake to try to attack the symptoms when you can be attacking the root. I think it's a much more efficient use of energy, instead of having to expend resources separately to attack this problem, this symptom, then extend another set of resources to attack this symptom, then another set of resources to attack this symptom, going at the root of the issue, then saying, boom, you can just expend the resources you need to attack the root and then address all of these issues simultaneously. I think this is a much smarter strategic approach, and I think it will be provide a more lasting benefit for the people who are suffering at any of those ends. And so, I think it's important to be focused on raising people's quality of living, standard of living, as opposed to just giving them crumbs to keep them content and so that they can live a livable wage. That doesn't sound, you're not really making a change. You're actually preserving the status quo by doing so. But specifically to what Ms. Ocasio-Cortez is speaking about, it's interesting that there hasn't been a lot of opportunity to challenge her or to see her in a situation where her views are being challenged. Even I just recently watched a debate between her and Crowley, and number one, he didn't go on the offense really at all. Number two, he was pandering to progressivism as opposed to trying to challenge it. So he's not going to. She was in no danger of her ideas being challenged as being impractical, unworkable, or just not good, or short-sighted, and not fully dealing with the consequences that would happen from implementing her policies. None of that existed from his side because he was trying to pander to progressivism and paint himself as, well, I'm actually progressive, which he full of it. He's a corporate Democrat and taking a lot of money to serve special interests. But that being said, I saw an interview recently with her on Firing Line by Margaret Hoover, and so much focus has been put on a particular portion of the interview where she gets challenged on her stance of Israel. She speaks about, Palestine being occupied, and she says, well, you said, the occupation of Palestine, and she pauses and she's thinking about it, and she starts trying to not immediately backtrack, but to try to clean it up to make it sound less so that her critique sounds less, geared towards the Palestinians and more of a neutral approach. And then the host, Margaret Hoover, asked her to expound some more. And from what I have seen of the interview, it seems as if Margaret Hoover is not of her ideology, does not agree with her ideology, but it also seems like she was not pushing very hard. So now I would, at some point, I will look at some of her other interviews to see if that's her normal style. If she never pushes hard, or if for some reason she was throwing snowballs, or softballs to Ocasio-Cortez for some reason, because maybe perhaps this was the agreed upon terms or style of the interview. But that being said, it seems to me, I'm looking at her face, that she saw a weakness in Ocasio-Cortez during this line of questioning and decided, I'm not going to push back, but I am going to allow her to speak more and ask her to speak more about it in a way that's going to reveal how little she knows about the subject. And, on the third, after, asking her to expound, it's, well, I'm no expert in geopolitics, which is interesting considering she has a bachelor's degree in economics and international relations. I mean, like, what? But you know, the one you were just espousing, espousing an opinion on the situation, and now you add the caveat. It's funny that people mention, Gary Johnson. Who is it? Anthony Brian Logan talked about how this reminded him of the Gary Johnson situation, and well, that was very funny. Definitely something to laugh about. I'm not gonna say, oh, because it's Gary Johnson, I'm not gonna make fun of. Hey, when you do something stupid, when you say something stupid, hey, you gotta acknowledge it. But I think there was a difference between her and Gary Johnson in terms of Gary Johnson starts off with letting you know, what? What is that? And then when it's clarified, you see that he has some knowledge of the situation, but his knowledge wasn't complete. But he does have some knowledge of the situation, but he starts off with saying, well, what is that? Whereas she starts off speaking as if, yeah, I know this. And then when you dig deeper, then it's like, well, I don't really know about this, but so there's a definite difference. And I think that's crucial because it says something about who she is. So I'm not harping on this in terms of, she doesn't know about Israel and Palestine. This is particularly interesting to me because it says something about the type of person she is. And as I start looking at other things through that lens, I'm like, whoa, it's very telling because she has a persona of being this underdog, and with that is like this assumption of innocence. And I'm like, no, I mean, she was trying to run game. She was freestyling and she got caught. And so when I take a look at, there's a couple other parts of the interview that I think are really telling. And I wish there would have been some pushback on it, but there wasn't. The lesser of the things that sticks out to me was when she was describing, well, democratic socialism, it's like socialism, but it's democratic, so it's better because people get to vote on it, So, they're not going to vote for something that's not good, ideally, which is funny because Donald Trump is president. Is she saying that Donald Trump is good because people voted for him? And you can sit there and say, oh, well, he won the electoral college, not the general, not the popular vote. And number one, your democratic socialism, we have no idea what if that's actually what it means. Which, come on, that's not really what it's about. But we'll play along for a minute. What type of voting system is going to be in place in choosing these whatever it is that he would be voting for in a democratic socialist state, but just the fact that millions and millions of people voted for Donald Trump. So to say that, oh no, if people voted on it, then it's got to be good. What is it? 34 states voted on the issue of gay marriage, and only 3 voted for it. 31 states voted against gay marriage. 31 states. Now that was the popular vote. So, so now what are you saying? I mean, you can't correlate this idea of just because it's popular, it's good. That's ridiculous. That's dangerous, and it's that kind of short-sightedness that makes me think, well, it's that kind of short-sightedness that makes her dangerous, but it's the fact that I don't think she's just short-sighted. I think she's actively gaming people. And that goes back to seeing her through the lens of how she tried to freestyle with the Israel question. She knew she didn't know what she was talking about, but she went ahead and expounded upon it to try to, okay, I'm gonna, hit these talking points. And then when pushed on it, okay, so let me try to clean this up a little bit. And then okay, well, explain in detail what you're talking about. Then, oh, okay, I don't know about this. Now it's you don't know. But how many other things does that exist for? I mean, and that's the thing. You haven't seen her ideas tested by anybody. You haven't seen her push back on the benefits of socialism. She tweets the other day that all these people are saying, oh, well, how do you pay for it? But they don't say this about they only say it when it comes to issues regarding working class people. It's not the libertarians. Libertarians will say corporate welfare. Who's going to pay for it? Libertarians will say more on drugs. That's a massive waste of money and other things. It's a massive waste of human capital. So there's people who push back universally against these things. So your talking points may apply to some hypocrites, particularly GOP, but there's a lot of people who push back on all of it and say this is just massive waste, and just this system of taking from some to give to others is itself problematic. You may love it as long as you're the person that's being given to, but once they're taking from you to give to somebody else, then all of a sudden it's a problem. That's why it's problematic. It's immoral, but you can't just be happy with it because you're not because you're on the receiving end. You're like, okay, it's cool with me. But the last point I wanted to get to about what she said, and this was just really eye-opening with regards to how much she actually knows, doesn't know, or just how untested her ideas are, is when she's speaking about the unemployment rate. Margaret Hoover mentions how unemployment is down to about 4%, 3.9%, and hey, isn't that a good thing? Isn't capitalism doing a good job there? And she says, oh, well, the reason why unemployment is low is because people have 2 and 3, everybody's working 2 jobs, and people are working 60, 70, 80 hours. What? Like, there's like no correlation, but even if any correlation that exists from that would most likely be that there would now be higher unemployment, because if one person has multiple jobs, that's less jobs available for others. So any correlation would work in the opposite. But like she just expounded on, and there was no pushback at all from Margaret Hoover. None whatsoever. So like that's just the way she just so nonchalantly just tossed complete and utter bullshit out there, and as a smokescreen, it's like, okay, do you know that you're full of it, and you're just saying things that people want to hear to advance your agenda? So now the question, at this point you don't know what her agenda is. Is she trying to get in office to actually do these things? Does she feel that will secure? Because the thing about a lot of these policies, one of the things about these policies I don't like is that you need these people to stay in government in order to continue, providing these lifelines. So what do you call it? There's a term that I'm about to use for it. I just can't. It's escaping me for the moment. But in other words, you need these people in place to continue these programs that drip and drab this support to the people who are suffering and are just trying to stay afloat. And I'm like, okay, no, that's self-serving. You're doing it in such a way so that the people need to keep voting you in power. So you still getting your 6-figure government paycheck and all these other benefits and perks. You still have your hands on the levers of power so that you can wield these controls. So it's not as if you're just doing something to help people, and you're not giving people enough help to end their need for support. That's the problem. So when you have a Bernie Sanders or a Miss Cortez who's talking about, yes, we need, free education and healthcare for all provided by the government, taxpayer money, federal jobs guarantee. Like, these are all things that you would need to keep electing her and her allies and compatriots in order to make sure that these programs continue. Because once you stop electing her, once you stop voting for her, the lifeline gets cut off, and then what? Now you're still in the same horrible condition you were, and you're not getting the support you need. That's why I think it's much more moral. It shows it's moral, it's smarter, it's actually more compassionate to be focusing on a plan that's going to lift people up so that they don't need me. So when I'm running, I'm running on issues of talking about, let's lift people up, let's get them out of poverty, let's put them in a position so that they don't need government assistance to get health care. They can afford it. They don't need government assistance for education. They can afford it. They don't need government providing them jobs. They've got jobs, or they own businesses and they provide jobs. They have income. They don't need this help from the government. Therefore, they don't need me. I get in position. I do what I need to do to lessen government's interference in our lives, to improve mass amounts, the lives of so many people, and then I can bounce. I don't need to keep getting elected for the next 30, 40, 50 years while I take taxpayer money and hand it out to the people that are, in little installments, in allowance, like I'm handing out allowances to keep me in power. No. I have no interest in working in government for decades. I want to get in, make some changes, get out. That's my objective. That's why I like the libertarians, because that's, wanting to take over government so we can leave you alone. Anything else is somebody trying to do something for themselves. And it's a self-serving agenda with a populist narrative. But that's my thoughts on her, and I really hope to see individuals pushing back more on her. It's not even about there's individuals who are willing to push back on her. It's a matter of whether or not she'll put herself in the position to deal with the ebb and flow, to deal with a debate with somebody who is challenging her ideology. So far, it seems that there are some people who've invited her onto shows that would be hostile, and she doesn't want to go for it, which may be legitimate. And some of these people may not be willing or looking to have a good faith debate. But even in terms of a good faith debate, my question is, would she take it? I'm not convinced she would. From what I've seen of her so far, it shows that she's got an agenda, and it's not helping. It's not drastically improving the lives of the people she's getting to vote for her. So thank you for joining me for today's episode, and see you next episode on Escaping the Echo Chamber.